The big glass doors of the Galactic Council chambers opened with their usual soft hiss, but something was wrong. Ambassador Jake Murphy should have walked through those doors 5 minutes ago. His seat at the curved table remained empty, while Alice. Dozens of alien delegates shifted nervously in their chairs. Director Veltar of the Zephyrian Empire tapped his long blue fingers on the metal surface. His silver eyes kept looking at the empty human chair. Jake was never late. In 20 years of service, the human ambassador had missed exactly 0 meetings. The man treated punctuality like a religion. The emergency session was about the void. Hunters again. Those terrible creatures from another dimension had attacked 3 cargo ships near the outer rim. The Council needed human tactical advice. They always needed human advice when things got bad. Veltar pressed a button on his control panel. A holographic screen appeared in the air above the table. The face of his aide, a nervous Kethlari named Zixinal, flickered into view. "Any word from Ambassador Murphy?" Veltar asked. Zixinal's 4 eyes blinked rapidly. "No, sir. We sent 3 messages to his quarters. No response. We also tried reaching the human embassy staff. And nobody answered there either." A cold feeling spread through Veltar's chest. The humans had embassy staff of 12 people. They did not all disappear at once. He looked around the chamber at the other delegates. The insect-like Vorthans were clicking their mandibles together. The plant-based Sylvans were rustling their leaves. Everyone could sense something was very wrong. "What about Captain Lisa Brooks?" asked Counselor Dex Ara from across the table. "Her patrol ship was supposed to report in this morning." Veltar's aide checked his datapad. His face went pale. The Defiant missed its scheduled communication. That was 4 hours ago. The chamber erupted in worried whispers. Captain Brooks commanded the most reliable patrol in the fleet. She had never missed a report in her 15 years of service. Her ship watched the dangerous space near the Void Hunter territory. Veltar stood up from his chair. His tall frame cast a shadow across the table. "I am calling a full investigation. Contact every human ship, every human colony, every human diplomatic post. I want answers in 1 hour." The next hour felt like the longest in galactic history. Reports came in from across known space. The results made no sense. Colony New Boston on Kepler 186F had gone silent. The mining station on Europa stopped responding. The research facility on Titan sent no signals, but the strangest reports came from the security footage. On New Mars, cameras showed humans walking through the streets at 14:27 Galactic Standard Time. At 14:28, the streets were empty. No bodies, no signs of struggle. People had simply vanished between 1 second and the next dot. The same thing happened. Everywhere. On the agricultural world of New Kansas, farmers were working in their fields. Security drones recorded them harvesting crops. Then the fields were empty. The crops lay half-picked. Farm equipment sat abandoned in the middle of rows. Zixinal burst into the council chamber with a datapad clutched in his claws. His breathing was rapid and shallow. "Sir, we have a problem. A big problem." Veltar looked at him. "Speak." "Every human consciousness signature has disappeared from our scanning networks. Not just the people. The quantum signatures that identify human brain patterns. They are gone from every scanner in the galaxy." The chamber fell silent. Quantum consciousness signatures could not be hidden or blocked. They were like fingerprints of the mind. If the scanners could not detect them, it meant the consciousness no longer existed in normal space. "That is impossible," whispered Counselor Myrith of the Altarian Republic. "Consciousness cannot simply vanish." "The scanners do not lie," Zixinal replied. "We checked them twice. The quantum resonance that makes human thoughts unique has disappeared from the galaxy." Veltar sat down heavily. The humans were gone. All Of them, every man, woman, and child had vanished in the same instant across thousands of light years. No technology in the galaxy could do such a thing. What about their ships? Asked Vexara. Still there, Zixno answered. Drifting in space. The automated systems are running, but no life signs. We sent boarding parties to 3 vessels. They found personal belongings, half-eaten meals, coffee still warm in cups. But no people. The weight of the situation began to settle on the delegates. Humans made up only 2% of the galactic population, but they held positions far beyond their numbers. They were ambassadors, ship captains, engineers, doctors, and military leaders. They served as bridges between alien species that had nothing in common. More than that, humans had a gift for solving problems that stumped other races. When the Zephyrians and Kethlari had their border war, human negotiators found a solution in 3 days. When the Vorthan plague threatened to spread across the galaxy, human doctors created a cure. When the Void Hunters first appeared, human tacticians developed the strategies that kept them contained. We need to find them, Veltar said. The galaxy depends on human innovation and leadership. But where do we even start looking? Asked Myrith. They could be anywhere, or nowhere. We start with the facts, Veltar replied. 15 billion humans do not vanish without leaving some trace. There has to be evidence. Some clue about where they went or what took them. He turned to address the full chamber. I am declaring a galaxy-wide emergency. Every available ship will join the search. Every scientific facility will analyze the quantum data. Every intelligence agency will investigate possible causes. The delegates began filing out to contact their home worlds. But Veltar remained in his chair, staring. At the empty human section, Jake Murphy's coffee cup still sat on the table where he had left it the day before. Steam no longer rose from the dark liquid. For the first time in 2 centuries, the Galactic Council would have to face a crisis without human guidance. The thought terrified him more than the Void Hunters ever had. Humans had become the glue that held their diverse civilization together. Without them, how long before old rivalries surfaced? How long before the alliance fell apart? Outside the chamber windows, the lights of Nexus Prime twinkled in the darkness of space. But Veltar could not shake the feeling that those lights seemed dimmer now, as if the galaxy itself had lost some vital spark when the humans disappeared. Search would begin immediately. But deep in his heart, Veltar feared they might already be too late. 3 weeks had passed since the humans vanished, and the galaxy was starting to fall apart. The first sign of trouble came from the Terran defense grid, the massive network of automated weapon platforms that protected the major trade routes. Technician Verkith of the Vorthan Engineering Corps stared at his control screens in growing panic. Red warning lights flashed across the entire display. The defense platforms were malfunctioning one by one. Some had stopped responding to commands. Others were firing randomly at passing ships. Commander Kate Sullivan had been the human liaison for the grid operations. She knew every circuit, every program line, every quirk of the ancient alien AI that controlled the platforms. Without her, the Vorthan technicians were trying to fix a machine they barely understood. The defense grid was old technology, built by a race that had died out long before humans joined the galactic community. But Kate and her team had spent decades modifying and improving the systems. They had taught the alien AI new tricks, shown it how to think in ways its original creators never imagined. Now the AI was reverting to its old programming that saw every ship as a potential threat. Platform 7 just locked weapons on a civilian transport, called out Technician Ballier from across the control room. The transport is carrying medical supplies to the Rigel colonies. Verkith S. Mandibles clicked together nervously. Can we override the targeting system? I am trying, but the AI is not accepting our commands. It wants Kate's authorization codes. Kate is gone, Verkith snapped. The AI has to accept that. But the artificial intelligence did not accept it. The AI had been programmed to trust only specific human brain patterns. It would not take orders from anyone else. Without Kate's quantum signature to verify commands, the defense grid was operating on pure instinct. The situation got worse by the hour. Platform 12 fired on a Kethlari military vessel, destroying it completely. Platform 15 targeted a space station full of civilians. Only quick thinking by the station crew saved 3,000 lives. Director Veltar received the emergency report while dealing with another crisis. The terraforming project on Kepler 442b had ground to a halt. Chief Engineer Ben Carter had designed atmospheric processors that worked perfectly with the planet's unusual magnetic field. Without his constant adjustments, the processors were producing toxic clouds instead of breathable air. The colonists on Kepler 442b were evacuating as fast as their transport ships could carry them. 50,000 people were abandoning homes they had built over 20 years. The planet they had worked so hard to make livable was becoming poisonous again. Similar problems were appearing across the galaxy. On the mining world of Series 7, the automated extraction systems had shut down completely. The human supervisors had programmed safety protocols that the alien workers could not override. Without ore from Series 7, dozens of manufacturing worlds would run out of raw materials within months. The economic impact was staggering. Human traders had negotiated complex deals between species that normally hated each other. Ambassador Jake Murphy alone had brokered 17 major trade agreements in the past year. With the humans gone, old prejudices were surfacing again. The Zephyrians and Kethlari had stopped all trade negotiations. Without human mediators, they could not agree on anything. The Sylvans were demanding payment for agricultural products in rare metals that most worlds could not afford. The Vorthans had recalled their technical advisors from mixed species projects. Veltar found himself spending 18 hours a day trying to prevent conflicts that humans had made look easy to solve. Diplomat Amy Foster had possessed an amazing gift for finding common ground between different species. She could take two groups that seemed to have nothing in common and show them shared interests they never knew existed. The psychological impact was just as bad as the practical problems. For 2 centuries, humans had been the ones to stay calm during crises. When things looked hopeless, human leaders would find a way forward. They never gave up, never accepted defeat, never stopped looking for solutions. Captain Rick Hayes had been famous for his motivational speeches during the last Void Hunter attack. His words had rallied a fleet of 6 different species to fight together. Without human inspiration, the other races were losing confidence in their ability to handle threats. Dr. Helen Parker's research had been crucial for understanding Void Hunter behavior. Her laboratory on Research Station Omega contained decades of data about the interdimensional parasites. But without her insights to interpret the information, the alien scientists could only read her notes and hope they understood correctly. The research station had become a museum of human genius. Dr. Parker's assistants tried to continue her work, but they lacked her intuitive understanding of how the Void Hunters thought and moved. The creatures followed patterns that seemed random to alien minds, but made perfect sense to humans. News came in daily of systems failing across the galaxy. The water purification plants on New Berlin had stopped working. Human engineer Bill Roberts had designed the filtration system to handle the planet's contaminated groundwater. Without his modifications, the standard alien technology could not cope with the unique chemical problems. The agricultural station on Demeter 3 was reporting crop failures. Human botanist Janet Green had developed hybrid plants that could grow in the station's artificial soil. The alien farmers were trying to keep the plants alive, but they did not understand the complex nutrient cycles that Janet had created. Even space traffic was becoming chaotic. Human controllers had managed the flow of ships through busy systems with an efficiency that amazed other species. They could coordinate hundreds of vessels, moving through complex patterns without a single collision. Now that human traffic control was gone, major shipping routes were experiencing dangerous congestion. The worst part was that everyone had taken human contributions for granted. Most aliens had assumed that the complex systems would keep running automatically. They had not realized how much constant human attention and innovation went into making everything work smoothly. Veltar called another emergency council session. The chamber felt different now. The empty human section seemed to cast a shadow over the entire room. The other delegates looked tired and worried. 3 weeks of crisis management was wearing everyone down. "We need to face the truth," Veltar announced. "The galaxy depends on human thinking in ways we never understood. They were not just another member species. They were the glue that held our civilization together." Counselor Vexara shifted uncomfortably. In her seat, "Can we not learn to do what they did? Surely we can study their methods and apply them ourselves." "We have been trying," replied Myrith. "But human problem-solving seems to work differently than ours. They see connections that we miss. They find solutions that would never occur to us." The sobering reality was becoming clear. Each alien species excelled in specific areas. The Zephyrians were master engineers who could build incredible machines. The Kethlari were unmatched warriors with perfect battle instincts. The Vorthans were brilliant theorists who understood complex mathematics. The Sylvans could grow anything in any environment, but humans were different. They could think like all the other species combined. They could understand Zephyrian engineering, Kethlari tactics, Vorthan theory, and Sylvan biology. More than that, they could see how to combine different approaches in ways that created entirely new solutions. Without humans, each species was falling back on their own strengths and ignoring the insights of others. The collaborative spirit that had built galactic civilization was disappearing. Old barriers between species were rising again. As the council session ended, Veltar stood at the chamber windows, looking out at the stars. Somewhere out there, 15 billion humans had vanished without a trace. The galaxy was discovering just how much it needed them back. 6 months after the humans disappeared, the Void Hunters struck with a fury that shook the entire galaxy. The interdimensional parasites had been quiet for 3 years, held back by human-designed containment fields and tactical strategies. Now they sensed weakness. Admiral Kixthara of the Kethlari battle fleet watched in horror as her ships fell back from the Arcturus system. 3 colonies had already fallen to the Hunters. Millions of people consumed by creatures that existed partially outside normal space. The Admiral's tactical displays showed enemy movements that made no sense according to traditional military thinking. Captain Rick Hayes had been the expert on Void Hunter psychology. He understood how the creatures thought and moved. His rotation strategies kept the Hunters confused by constantly changing defensive patterns. Without human innovation, the Galactic Fleet was using the same boring formations that every military academy taught. The Hunters adapted to predictable tactics within hours. They learned to counter standard Kethlari aggression, Zephyrian defensive grids, and Vorthan mathematical formations. What had once been humanity's greatest strength was now the galaxy's greatest weakness. The aliens could not think outside their own species patterns. "They are breaking through the Deneb line," reported Commander Zurgoth from the bridge of the flagship. "Estimate total system loss in 47 hours. Admiral Kixthara's 4 arms tensed with frustration. Her people were born warriors, red, for combat across 1,000 generations. But they fought with honor and tradition. The Void Hunters had no honor. They were pure appetite given form, consuming everything they touched. Human tactics had worked because humans thought like predators and prey at the same time. They could be as ruthless as the hunters when necessary, but also as clever as the species trying to survive. Captain Hayes had taught the fleet to fight dirty, to use tricks and deceptions that other species found distasteful. Now the fleet was losing because they fought the way their ancestors taught them. Noble, predictable, doomed to psychological. Impact was devastating. For centuries, humans had been the ones to rally others when things looked hopeless. They never accepted defeat, never stopped looking for new angles to try. When Admiral Kixthara felt despair creeping into her thoughts, she remembered Captain Hayes standing on the bridge during the Battle of Wolf. 359. The battle had been going badly. The hunters had broken through 2 defensive lines and were closing on a planet full of civilians. Every tactical analysis said the situation was hopeless. But Hayes had smiled and said something that became legendary in the fleet. Hopeless just means nobody has thought of the right idea yet. He had been right. His crazy plan to use the planet's magnetic field as a weapon had saved 8 million lives. But Hayes was gone now, and Admiral Kixthara could not think of any crazy plans. The situation got worse when Dr. Helen Parker's research station fell silent. The Void Hunters had found Research Station Omega and consumed everyone aboard. Decades of knowledge about hunter behavior was lost along with the scientists who might have understood it. Dr. Parker had been working on something important before she vanished with the other humans. Her lab contained experiments that her alien assistants could not interpret. Strange energy readings that followed patterns no one else could decode. Equipment that seemed to respond to quantum fluctuations in ways that defied known physics. Without Dr. Parker to explain her work, the research was useless. The alien scientists could read her notes, but they could not think like her. Human intuition about the hunters came from some deep understanding that other species lacked. Veltar authorized desperate measures that would have horrified the Council in better times. The cloning project began in secret laboratories on 3 different worlds. Scientists used human genetic material from medical databases, trying to create new humans who could replace the ones that were lost. The results were heartbreaking. The clones looked human, but their brains showed no activity beyond basic life functions. They could breathe and their hearts could beat, but there was no consciousness inside. No spark of human creativity or problem-solving ability. They were empty shells that reminded everyone of what was missing. Next came the Android project. Engineers uploaded human memories from backup systems into artificial bodies. The results were even more disturbing. The androids could recite human knowledge word for word, but they could not apply it to new situations. They were like libraries with legs, able to quote Captain Hayes, but unable to think like him. President Maria Santos had left behind detailed strategic documents before she vanished. Battle plans, diplomatic protocols, and crisis management procedures filled massive databases. But the plans required the kind of adaptive thinking that only humans seemed to possess. Following human instructions without human insight led to disaster after disaster. The Battle of Kepler-22 became a perfect example of the problem. The fleet followed one of Captain Hayes' battle plans exactly as written. The plan was brilliant and should have worked perfectly. But the hunters had evolved new tactics since Hayes wrote the plan. The rigid alien commanders could not adapt the strategy to meet changing conditions. Half the fleet was destroyed because they could not think like humans. They could follow human plans, but they could not improve them or change them when circumstances required flexibility. Trade disputes turned into armed conflicts without human mediators. The Sylvan-Zephyrian border war started over shipping rights that Ambassador Jake Murphy had negotiated years earlier. Without humans to interpret the complex agreements, both sides claimed the other was cheating. The war lasted only 3 days, but it shut down the major agricultural shipments between the inner and outer systems. Food shortages began appearing on industrial worlds that depended on sylvan crops. The Zephyrians cut off technical support for terraforming projects on 12 planets. Every attempt to replace human functions failed in new and unexpected ways. The aliens were discovering that human contributions went far beyond simple knowledge or skills. Humans had a way of seeing connections between things that seemed unrelated. They could take ideas from completely different fields and combine them into solutions that no one else would think of. Engineer Lisa Walsh had designed the atmospheric processors on New Titan by combining Vorthan mathematics, Cathlari metallurgy, and Sylvan biological processes. The result was technology that was more efficient than anything any single species could create. But without humans to bridge the gaps between different ways of thinking, such innovations were impossible. The galaxy's greatest minds worked around the clock trying to solve problems that humans had made look easy. They formed committees with representatives from every species. They shared information freely and cooperated in ways that had never happened before. But they still could not think like humans. The truth was becoming impossible to ignore. Humans were not just another member, species of the galactic community. They were something unique and irreplaceable. Their minds worked differently than any other known intelligence. They could understand and synthesize the thinking patterns of all other species, while adding something that was purely their own. As the Void Hunters consumed system after system, and the galactic economy collapsed into chaos, one question haunted every leader: what made humans special, and how could they possibly get them back? The answer, when it finally came, would be more shocking than anyone imagined. But first, the galaxy would have to face the terrible possibility that the humans might be gone forever. 1 year after the humans vanished, the breakthrough came from the most unlikely source. Psycheth was a young Eltarian who had worked as Dr. Nathan Cole's research assistant at Luna Station. While cleaning out abandoned human facilities, she discovered something that changed everything. Hidden beneath Luna Station was a secret laboratory that Dr. Cole had built without official permission. The room was filled with strange equipment that hummed with energy, even though no one had been there for a year. Banks of quantum computers surrounded a central device that looked like nothing in any textbook. Psycheth's large golden eyes widened as she studied the central machine. Streams of data flowed across holographic displays, showing readings that continued even after all this time. Dr. Cole had built something that was still working, still recording, still searching for answers that he never lived to find. The lab's main computer recognized her voice from when she had worked with Dr. Cole. It activated a recording that made her 3 hearts skip beats. Dr. Cole's face appeared on the main screen, looking tired but excited. "If you are watching this, then the event has already happened," his image said. "I've been tracking quantum consciousness signatures for 5 years. Something is calling to the humans. Something from outside our normal space-time." Psycheth stared. At the recording, Dr. Cole had known the humans would disappear. He had been studying it, trying to understand what was happening to them. His secret experiments had been tracking changes in human brain patterns that nobody else had noticed. The quantum consciousness detector was still running. For a full year, it had been recording the empty space where human minds used to exist. But the readings were not completely empty. There were echoes, quantum shadows that suggested the human consciousness signatures had not been destroyed. They had been moved. Dr. Cole's research notes told an incredible story. Humans had not evolved on Earth. They were refugees from another dimension, survivors of a catastrophe that had destroyed their original home. The human brain contained dormant structures that connected them to their lost civilization. The evidence was overwhelming once. Psychith knew where to look. Human DNA contained sequences that made no sense from an evolutionary perspective. Human neural patterns included quantum structures that served no apparent function. Human brains could process certain types of information that should have been impossible given their biological design. Dr. Cole had discovered that these quantum structures were activation keys. Someone or something could trigger them from a distance, calling the human consciousness back to its origin point. The energy requirements for such an operation were enormous, but the technology existed somewhere beyond the galactic rim. The recording continued with Dr. Cole's most shocking discovery. Earth's government had been receiving signals for months before the disappearance. Signals that only humans could detect, coming from a source that moved faster than light. The signals had been growing stronger, and many humans had reported strange dreams about a place they had never seen. Agent Steve Miller's classified files contained detailed reports about the signal incidents. Thousands of humans across the galaxy had experienced the same dream. They saw a realm where the laws of physics operated differently, where consciousness could exist without physical form, where beings of pure thought fought against creatures of pure entropy. The dreams had been calling them home, not to Earth, but to their true home in another dimension, the place where their ancestors had come from before the great catastrophe forced them to flee into normal space. Psychith spent days studying Dr. Cole's data, trying to understand the implications. If humans were originally from another dimension, then their unique abilities made perfect sense. They could think in ways that bridged different realities, because they had evolved in a place where multiple realities intersected. That explained why humans could understand and synthesize the thinking patterns of other species. Their minds were designed to operate across dimensional boundaries. They could see connections that others missed because they naturally thought in terms of multiple layered realities. The quantum consciousness detector had recorded the exact moment of the disappearance. Every human mind in the galaxy had received the same signal simultaneously. Their dormant quantum structures had activated, creating a massive translocation event that moved 15 billion consciousness patterns to coordinates outside normal spacetime. But the most important discovery was yet to come. The signals from beyond the galactic rim were still transmitting. Dr. Cole's equipment was sensitive enough to decode fragments of the messages. What Psychith Reed made her realize that the humans had not abandoned the galaxy by choice. The fragments spoke of an ancient enemy awakening. Entities called the Devourers that consumed entire dimensions by feeding on the quantum energy of consciousness itself. The Void Hunters were just scouts, advanced forces sent to test the defenses of normal space. Humanity's ancestors had been the guardians against this threat. Their quantum-enhanced consciousness was the only thing that could fight beings that existed outside physical reality. When the Devourers had attacked their home dimension, most of the Guardian race had died in the final battle. The survivors had fled to Earth, hoping to hide until they were strong enough to fight again. Now the Devourers were awakening from eons of hibernation. The Void Hunter attacks had been tests, probing for the presence of Guardian consciousness. When they detected human quantum signatures, they had triggered the ancient recall protocol that called the Guardians home to face their ancient duty. The humans had not been taken against their will. They had been called to fulfill a responsibility that their species had carried for millions of years. They were fighting a war in another dimension, while the galaxy collapsed without them. Psychith contacted Director Veltar immediately. Council gathered in emergency session to hear her report. The revelation that humans were interdimensional refugees explained so much about their unique abilities, but it also raised a terrifying question. If the Devourers were powerful enough to threaten entire dimensions, what chance did anyone have against them? The Void Hunters were just their advance scouts, and they had already consumed dozens of star systems. What would happen when the real enemy arrived? Commander Tony Wright's personal logs provided the final piece of the puzzle. He had been one of the humans experiencing the calling dreams, and his detailed descriptions of the other realm gave the scientists a target. His words guided them toward understanding the dimensional coordinates where humanity had gone. The dream realm was real. It was a place where consciousness could exist independently of matter, where thoughts had the power to reshape reality. The devourers fed on this type of existence, growing stronger by consuming the awareness and creativity of thinking beings. Only consciousness that had evolved across dimensional boundaries could fight such entities. The human mind, shaped by quantum structures from their ancestral home, was perfectly designed for this type of warfare. Every human was a potential weapon against an enemy that threatened all reality, but the battle was not going well. The quantum readings suggested massive conflicts in the other dimension, with consciousness signatures appearing and disappearing as the war raged on. Humanity was fighting alone against an enemy that had destroyed their civilization once before. The galaxy needed to help them. But how could physical beings fight in a realm of pure thought? How could ships and weapons affect entities that existed beyond matter and energy? The answer would require the combined knowledge of every species in the galaxy, and it would demand sacrifices that no one had ever imagined. The galaxy was dying. 2 years after the humans disappeared, the Void Hunters had consumed 47 star systems. Economic collapse had turned allies into enemies. Without human mediation, 6 different wars raged between former friends. The Council faced a choice between desperate action and total extinction. Director Veltar stood before the largest gathering in galactic history. Representatives from every known species filled the massive assembly hall on Nexus Prime. Even races that had been enemies for centuries sat together, united by the knowledge that they all faced the same fate. "We will attempt to bring the humans back," Veltar announced. "Using Dr. Cole's research and the combined technology of every member species, we will build a bridge to the dimension where they are fighting." The Quantum Bridge Project was the most ambitious undertaking in galactic history. It would require technology from every species working together in ways that had never been tried. The energy demands alone would drain the power systems of entire star sectors. The risks were enormous. The energy discharge from opening a dimensional rift could destroy multiple solar systems. The breach might let in entities far worse than the Void Hunters. Worst of all, they might discover that humanity was already dead, consumed by the Devourers in their hopeless war. But the alternative was certain doom. Without humans, the galaxy would fall piece by piece until nothing remained but empty space and drifting Void Hunters. Chief Engineer Voxnull of the Zephyrian Empire led the construction project. Her people were master builders, but even they had never attempted anything like this. The quantum bridge required materials and techniques that pushed the limits of known science. The Kethlari provided dimensional stabilizers based on their warrior culture's understanding of combat in multiple realities. The Vorthans contributed mathematical models that described the intersection points between dimensions. The Sylvans offered biological computers that could process the quantum calculations needed to target the bridge accurately. For the first time in galactic history, every species was working together without human guidance. They shared their most advanced secrets, combined their different approaches to technology, and created something that none of them could have built alone. The construction site was a marvel that would have made human engineers proud. Built in the orbital space around a neutron star for power, the quantum bridge stretched for thousands of kilometers. Crystalline structures from the Altarians focused exotic energy. Kethlari battle armor protected the control systems. Zephyrian engineering held it all together. Commander Tony Wright's personal logs provided the targeting data. His descriptions of the other dimension were so detailed that the Vorthan mathematicians could calculate the exact coordinates. The dream realm he had described was real, and they could find it. The activation sequence began with representatives from every species, contributing their knowledge. For the first time since humans vanished, the different races were thinking like humans. They were combining their strengths instead of working separately. Psychith monitored the quantum consciousness detector as the bridge powered up. The readings showed massive disturbances in the dimensional barrier. Something on the other side was responding to their efforts. The humans were still alive, still fighting, still hoping for rescue. The bridge opened with a flash of light that was visible from 100 star systems. The rift in space-time crackled with energies that had never existed in normal reality. Through the opening, the assembled aliens could see glimpses of a realm where thought had physical form. The other dimension was a war zone. Beings of pure consciousness battled against entities of absolute emptiness. The devourers appeared as holes in reality itself, consuming everything they touched and growing larger with each victory. Against them fought shapes that could only be human souls, blazing with determination and creativity. But the humans were losing. 2 years of constant battle had worn them down. The devourers had grown stronger by consuming other realities, while humanity fought with only their own resources. The ancient enemy that had destroyed their home dimension was winning again. The desperate call for help reached through the dimensional barrier. Humanity's quantum signatures flared with hope as they realized that their sacrifice had not been forgotten. The galaxy they had protected for centuries was reaching out to save them. Then something impossible happened. The humans began to change. The quantum energy from the bridge was flowing into the other dimension, carrying with it the thoughts and hopes of every species in the galaxy. Zephyrian engineering brilliance, Kethlari warrior spirit, Vorthan mathematical precision, Sylvan life energy, Altarian wisdom. For the first time since they had vanished, humans were connected to the diverse thinking patterns that had made them so effective. But now the connection was stronger than ever before. Every alien species was deliberately sharing their knowledge, their perspectives, their unique ways of understanding reality. The effect was incredible. Human consciousness blazed brighter as it absorbed the combined wisdom of the galaxy. They became more than they had ever been before, enhanced by the voluntary gifts of the races they had served. The devourers recoiled from this new type of consciousness, something they had never encountered. Captain Rebecca Hayes was the first to step through the dimensional